What up, friends? I'm Soze the Slow, and today we're going to be reviewing REI AMI's debut album, Mixtape Foil. This is the debut project by the Korean and American singer-songwriter and rapper REI AMI. I'm on the fence between calling it an album or a mixtape because it is 10 songs, but it's also only like 20 minutes long, so I guess I'll just call it a mixtape from here on out. REI AMI has recently found some breakout success with her single Snow Cone, a fun pop rap tune with some harsh samples and cheeky vocals. Her signature style / gimmick, if you want to call it that, is basically having two distinct parts of a song strung together through a beat switch. One of these parts is her more badass REI persona, while the other is her more intimate and vulnerable AMI persona. It's pretty unique, honestly, setting her apart from a lot of her contemporaries in the pop and trap rap scene. Her mixtape is pretty good overall, if a bit short. However, her distinctive style honestly can prevent a lot of these songs from having a core identity of their own. Revelations is a pretty short and elegant intro that calls back to her religious upbringing a little bit, kind of giving us a little bit more insight into REI AMI, even if she's not really a part of that scene anymore. Everybody else has a pretty interesting beat to kick things off, having a sparse and glitchy beat contrasted by her more taunting vocals. The track doesn't really have that duality that I mentioned that's in other tracks on this project. However, it is fun, even if a bit short. It kind of serves as a second opener of sorts to further express the confidence that she has in herself. Ricky Bobby is the real first track, though. I love that soulful sample in the beginning with those chimes before we get into that braggadocious trap banger. There's some fun and cocky flows, heavy bass with quirky sound effects, along with a pretty wistful chorus. It's honestly pretty hard not to vibe with this one. It's a cool little song with attitude that parallels the journey of Ricky Bobby from the film Talladega Heights, and all those car references in the second verse were also pretty funny. Damn is more of a contemporary R&B tune with the spacey guitar and lighter vocals. That chorus has a somber energy thanks to the sample and the bigger drum presence, and I like how each of the verses has a different pacing to it that helps the track's flow overall. It does have that K-R&B presence that's pretty hot right now, however I do really like the more hip-hop inspired beat that this one has. It's also a pretty nice moment of contemplation and vulnerability for the project overall. The namesake track of sorts, REI AMI, is going for a more bombastic style with a hardcore trap sound along with some distortion and harsh beats. REI AMI's flows are one of her best traits in my opinion, being able to sound smooth and confident at the same time. This is also shown off in the slow switch in verse 2 to keep things interesting. It's a bad bitch anthem, but it's definitely fun enough to warrant that. Cherry Chapstick isn't a bad track per se, but it's a bit repetitive. I feel like the previous song did everything this one did, but more solid and precise. Some vocal inflections, like at the end of the first verse, are fun, and the focus on the Cherry Chapstick to convey her confidence is pretty cute. However, overall, it's just a bit there at the end of the day. Saturn Emoji is another R&B-esque song with suave guitar and some lush drum beats and elegant vocals. It feels so intimate and lush, despite the instrumentals overall being kind of sparse. The beat switch to a more dark, trap-oriented sound was also pretty well done. I like how we're using the guitar as a sense of normalcy, and her flows are as smooth as usual, too. Leading into the third verse after the beat switch with lane switch, he don't speak the language, was also pretty clever. That's On You is another one of the better bangers on the mixtape. I love how exaggerated this beat is with the crowds cheering, this weird circus instrumental to it, and her pretty slick vocals. In true REI AMI fashion though, the beat switch changes this track into the direct opposite of confidence, going into a more dark and low-key trap R&B tune. It still has some good flows though, even if the transition can be a little bit jarring. However, I guess it does do a pretty good job at expressing how fast those depressive episodes can hit even if you're having a good time. F.R.A. is definitely my least favorite, fearing the most standard and simplistic in terms of its trap beats and flows. Compared to a lot of the other songs, I don't get the usual confidence or introspection from this one. It doesn't even have the beat switch gimmick either, making this song kind of pointless in the grand scheme of things. The lyrics are also pretty bland, trying to go the self-confidence route, but without the humor and wit of the previous songs. To end things off, we get Do It Right, a somber ballad of sorts featuring Amine somehow. It's a nice closer though, showing even after all of her bragging and confidence, REI AMI still has her own problems at the end of the day. I like the more sparse verses and intricate chorus, and her vocal cadence also carries a good amount of weight. Hearing Amine sing instead of rap is a bit odd, but it's still pretty good. I don't know if he was really necessary, especially because his vocals aren't nearly as depressing as REI AMI's are. However, I don't think he detracts from the song or anything like that, and he does add to the narrative of the track pretty nicely. A lot of the lyrics are pretty vivid too, especially with REI AMI wondering every conversation with myself's like, why couldn't you be someone else? All in all, this is definitely not a bad project, it's just one that has a lot more potential. REI AMI's style of honing in and utilizing beat switches is definitely interesting, however, it's also a bit of a double-edged sword. I feel like a lot of these songs lack a core identity when the two halves are so different from each other. I think the biggest thing that she could do to fix this is to make the beat switches utilize the same instrumentals, just in different ways. Like with That's On You, for instance, I do like the track, however, there is nothing that ties the two halves together. So the narrative, the flow, it's just kind of interrupted when we get to that beat switch. Each individual part tends to be good, but you need that something to just tie everything together. Otherwise, you end up having basically two separate songs in one timeline. The songs on this project in general are also pretty short, highlighting these issues further, and it also prevents each half from having time to breathe, which I think they desperately need, especially if they're so different from each other. Other than that though, I think this is a pretty interesting project. It's short but sweet, and it shows that REI AMI has the potential to be the next big and interesting thing. I'm feeling a strong 6 on REI AMI's debut mixtape. Of course, we do have to talk about album covers on this show, and I actually like this album cover a lot. It's a bit haphazard with how everything is placed. However, I do like how avant-garde the text is, especially with her two different poses with two different outfits, kind of showcasing her badass and more vulnerable personas. It kind of has a similar aesthetic to like the Faint's Dance Macabre a little bit, kind of that sort of constructivist, collage-y style. I'm a huge fan of that, so of course I would like this cover. It could maybe be refined a little bit, but overall I think this is a pretty good cover that expresses both of her personalities. Of course, those are just my thoughts on this new REI AMI project. What did you guys think? Did you also agree that she might be the next big thing? She just needs to hone it in a little bit? Or is this sound just not really doing much for you? Let me know. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. Ring the bell if you want to join my foil. That doesn't make any sense at all. But until the next one, farewell.